Josh Grizzard talks about his new role as the team prepares for OTAs next week. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs. He is Evan Klosky at eKlosky WTSP. We are your credentialed members of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here with you every Monday through Friday along with the everydayers. For that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. Another delayed mailbag question, and we are going to get Evan's reaction to the announcement of Simeon Rice being inducted into the Ring of Honor. But Evan, let's start with Tuesday's media availability. And of course, new offensive coordinator Josh Grizzard. He talked about quite a few things, including the addition of your guy, new receiver, Emeka Egbuka. But what was your biggest takeaway from Grizzard's time with the media?
Yeah, I mean, first off, Grizz is certainly not giving us too much, which is something smart. Yeah, nothing earth-shattering was really the first takeaway. Status quo, he's getting more comfortable. I certainly liked what I was hearing with the fact that, hey, you know, we're running the same system, right? There are going to be little tweaks here or there. But now we can get into the nuances. Now we can talk about how to block this. How do we run this route? And more importantly, talking about conditioning, getting these guys into shape. Because we saw a lot of those wide receivers go down. Now, Chris was that was an unfortunate injury that had nothing to do with stamina. But, you know, Sterling Shepard had his issues. Mike Evans had his issues. I mean, the wide receivers were going down left and right last season. Even some stuff in training camp, like even guys like Cody Thompson, who we thought could make the team. You know, why am I blanking out on the wide receiver who Cameron Johnson? Jeez, thanks, James. Appreciate you bailing me out there.
I had any idea.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying you know, there's a little bit of, hey, we do a lot of motion, so we got to make sure we're in good shape. But otherwise, great things to say about Egbuka. You know, they already knew kind of what they were getting. They have familiarity with what Ohio State staff did with him and the fact they can move him around, and he is so consistent. Certainly great to hear there. But you know, otherwise, look, you got to ask about Baker and all kind of the run-of-the-mill questions. So there's nothing really to break down too much with Grizz, as they are just still very much at the beginning of what they're trying to do. But what we can gather is that Grizz has sifted through a lot of plays in tape. You know, he says that when you're scouting players, you sometimes pick up on plays that you can add into your playbook. So I already know that the work has been put in from Grizz, that he has scoured as much tape as he could to make sure that he's got whatever wrinkles he can add to this offense that will be added. But other than that, status quo.
Well, there were plenty of other coaches that spoke on Tuesday. You know, basically the entire offensive staff. So what about the rest of those coaches? What were kind of some of your big takeaways there from some of the other guys that spoke?
So what stood out the most to me was when Thad Lewis was speaking, and he was joking that he told Baker he's in the 30 club now, right? You're 30. You can't, you know, some of the things that you used to do with your body when you moved in your 20s ain't going to work when you're in your 30s. So there are gotta-have-it plays, fourth down, some certain third and shorts, 2-minute drills where Thad wants Baker to dig into that chip on your shoulder, for lack of a better term, piss and vinegar and really just get what he's got to get done. But he was pleading, like, we are trying to tell him he's got to protect his body. He's got to play for the next play. Trust your teammates. Trust your defense. A punt is not always the worst thing, but telling him your availability is so important to this team's success. You do not want to be on the sidelines. That is going to hurt you a lot more than having the punt team come out. So I think that knowing that that's being reinforced, knowing that Baker has to do a little bit better job of protecting the football, mentioned that he felt at times Baker tried to put the team on his back, and it led to some bad plays, playing within himself a little bit more. So they're going through that, and Baker is a tough critic on himself. I don't think he's resting on any laurels. So some really good stuff there. Kefense Hinson, who has worked with Grizz in the past when they were at Yale. Obviously, Grizz was just a kid then. But bringing him in, having kind of this, most of the staff is coming back, right? Like, you don't have a Liam, but almost everybody's returning. Hinson's kind of the new guy there. So it was interesting to hear like how nice it was to have Hinson there, because you're trying to communicate some things in coaching meetings, and if he doesn't understand what you're talking about, well, how are the rookies going to understand that? So right. There is a little bit of having to go back to foundational stuff, and he's been good in that respect. Kevin Carberry spoke about Graham Barton and his leadership qualities and how he's a little bit more in the front of the room now. He is taking a little bit more of a vocal say in some things versus kind of leaning on Hainsey and some other, Justin School, two guys who were great pieces to that room last year, not there anymore. So Graham Barton, I expect to take a jump. Otherwise, and then, Brian Picucci also mentioned just how these undrafted offensive linemen who they grabbed in free agency, probably a better unit this year than last year. So that's probably they drafted 2 offensive linemen last year. They didn't draft any this year. You're probably, willing to find some different things. But those were kind of the big ticket items, I would say, of what if you had to really cycle through the hour of sound, that's probably what you would have found out. And once again, Skip Pete reaffirming the fact that this is going to be Bucky's running back room. He is going to be the starting tailback, but Rashad's going to get in there. Sean Tucker is going to get some say as well, in that he's only been in 2 situations where it's really been a one-horse show, and that was DeMarco Murray and Felix Jones. Otherwise, he's very big in the rotations, and even though Bucky's going to be the main guy, Rashad is going to have a role, and they're going to have to figure out ways to get Sean Tucker on the field as well. So an hour's worth of sound, that's the best Cliff Notes version I can give you.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I spoke plenty about Rachaad White on yesterday's episode, what I think he's going to be this upcoming season. And after listening to Skip, I'm a little more confident in my assessment as to how that's going to go. But, Evan, we have ourselves a mailbag question that I have been sitting on since mid-April. We're going to get to that next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. It's no wonder that 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves and news never stop. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. All right, huge shout out to insider Nate, who sent this back on April 17th. And I told him, I was like, we are right up against the draft. Let me sit on this. I'm going to circle back. I won't forget you, but this is the perfect time to bring it up after we just got done getting your reaction to the offensive coaches, but more specifically, Grizzard and his time with the media on Tuesday. So Nate asked, and this is a little bit of a long one, but Nate said, Canales' lack of play calling experience feels very near Grizzard's. With Canales, the Bucs were improved, but light years from where we were with Coen. One major difference between the two was that Baker leveled up by taking 2 or more plays into the huddle with Coen, and there were countless times Mayfield audibled out of the original play. Will Grizzard's play calling potentially shackle Mayfield and the offense into one play, or does Bowles believe Baker will have the same flexibility at the line as last year? My worry is that Canales' success in Tampa was because we worked through his on-the-job training solely because we compared it to Leftwich. Will we be as patient when the comparison is to Liam Coen? So that's a great question from Nate. Evan, I'm going to kick it over to you first before I give my thoughts.
First off, again, this is pretty much the same offense. Grizz believes in motion and being multiple. He's going to give a handful of plays to Baker. They're going to check out of it, right? It's a philosophical thing. So what Dave was is not what Liam was. Liam hired Grizzard. Grizzard philosophically agrees with where Liam is. The whole point of why they hired Grizzard was to carry over what they did in 2024 and make it a little bit better. So they're not reinventing the wheel. And no, this is not going to be a submit one play to the huddle and, oh boy, you're screwed. Absolutely not. We know that. Todd Bowles has confirmed it. Grizzard has confirmed it. So I can alleviate those concerns right now. As far as the Dave Canales stuff, Dave was great for that team in 2022. 2023. Sorry, in 2023. Yes. They were a group that was a little bit teetering on, are we going to have to rebuild this thing, or can we make a run with what we got? And Dave was an optimist bully, and he was not the world's greatest play caller. There was a little on-the-job training, but at the same time, there was, like, the bones of the offense were really good. I think you forgot to mention that Mike Evans had an unbelievable season under Dave Canales. They ran that offense through Mike Evans, and that's why they just drafted McMillan over there, because it is sort of what Dave wanted. Now, having said that, the running game was still terrible under Dave Canales. He was certainly super stubborn in his play calling, and it was not a finished product. But Carolina bet on the leader that he is, and I think it's really tough to ignore what he's done with Bryce Young there, taking him from this wasted first overall pick to, at the back half of the season, making him look like one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league for a stretch there. So, I don't find it comparable. And the organization is in two separate situations right now, of where one, we had no idea what that team was going to be. I think entering that year, they were like 4.5 wins was the prediction, right? It was like something crazy. And now, this year, I mean, while it's not a foregone conclusion, obviously, they are still the favorites in the betting markets to win the NFC South again. So I'm confident in Grizz. There are going to be learning curves, and it's not going to be easy for him, but he is a super smart guy. He's had a great mentor in he's a great mentors, not just in working under Mike McDaniel, but working under Liam Coen. And he's got every offensive piece back. The car is ready to go. He doesn't have to do much mechanically speaking. Just don't run it off the road. So I think that, and not to mention, I spoke with Bruce Arians about this a couple weeks ago when he was in town for his foundation event. And I asked him, like, how hard is it for a first-time play caller to call plays? Like, you had to go through it. And he said it is tough, but, Bruce was sort of kind of around at least those Dave Canales days. I mean, he was kind of phasing out of the organization by then, but certainly more in touch with the organization then than maybe a little bit now, where he really is soaking in that retirement life. But with Canales, he said, you just practice it all the time, call it periods, so on and so forth. The preseason, you're going to learn who speaks in your ear, yada, yada, yada. But Bowles is going to make sure that he is game ready for game one, and they will all OTA long do a bunch of call it periods and go through scenarios and really put Grizzard through the ringer. So I'm not going to say it's going to be Liam Coen. There's a reason why he was hired as a head coach this year. But I am confident in what Grizz will do.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much with you with everything that you said. And I think obviously there are going to be situations where we're going to see Grizz make a bad play call. And you hope he learns from that. But I will say I'm more confident in the offense being as good, or at least close to as good as it was last year, than I was the jump from Canales to Coen, just because, and it wasn't that I didn't have faith in Coen. It was a matter of, now you are, like you said, this is a guy that was hired by Coen because they have similar philosophies. We didn't know, the big differences between Canales and Coen at the time. Looking back, it still wasn't an incredibly different offense. It was just far more efficient, and there were more playmakers. The offensive line was better, so that helped the run game, and so on and so forth. But I think the other thing to remember in all this was that Grizz was the third down guy. So the toughest call you're going to have on any drive is going to be that third down to convert and keep the drive moving. And that was his specialty. So I'm really confident in their ability to do that because they were one of the best third down offenses in the NFL last year. So it's going to be kind of like you said, it's going to be different, but that doesn't mean that it's going to regress. And I think that's really important. And again, there will be mistakes made. You just don't want to see him make the same mistakes over and over and over. Kind of like how we all got a little frustrated with Dave being so dedicated to the run game when it very clearly was not going well. But yeah, I think this offense is going to be just fine this year with Grizz as a first-time play caller. But Evan, Simeon Rice spoke about his induction into the Ring of Honor. We are going to talk about that next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Wrapping things up here on a WTSP edition of Locked On Bucs. And Evan, you were there on Monday when the Bucs held their official press conference announcing the induction of Simeon Rice into the Ring of Honor when the Bucs host the Cardinals in November. Rice was, shall we say, uncharacteristically emotional when he stepped to the podium. But this is the first time you and I have spoken since that announcement was made at the end of last week, and obviously since the presser on Monday. So talk about your reaction to first the news that Simeon was the choice, but then obviously you got some one-on-one time to speak with him, the former member of the Blitz back in its inaugural year. So
right.
Talk a little bit about your reaction to the announcement of Simeon and then your conversation with him.
Yeah, I mean, first it was great to see Sim again, and Father Sim, because he wasn't a pops yet when we were doing the blitz. So I mean, he's really, the thing that Sim says is he sinks his teeth. When he sinks his teeth into something, he's committed and he goes all the way, and that's kind of where he is right now as a dad. So it's been really cool to see him find his identity in that space. But anybody out there who has, lost a parent before, like, you understand those moments where it just, it sneaks up on you, man. You can plan for it. You can say, I'm not going to cry and do all those things. But when that train is a trucking, there's no stopping it. So it was really the number one thing that I appreciate about Sim is his authenticity. He's so genuine. Sometimes, look, I mean, he has opinions on a lot of things, and he's going to speak his mind, and he's going to say some stuff, and you're going to be like, what? But he is 1,000% himself. And to hear him talk about, like, going to the portal of his mind and talk about how hard he worked and really, like, how the organization was kind of saying, like, good job, like a father telling his kid, like, you did a great job. It was really nice. I know it meant a lot to him, even though he mentioned, and he's right, these are man-made, accolades, right? Nobody can tell him that he wasn't the baddest MFer out there. But,
right.
I think for all of us humans, we do like to know that we're appreciated for our work and we're being recognized. And it's clear from, Tampa Bay, the organization, they're going to try to help in this push to get him more recognized for the Hall of Fame. And that has been a long time coming. And he's been a semifinalist a million times. I think this past year he finally cracked the top 50, but I don't think he's ever been a top 25 guy. So it's really it's not going to happen next year or anything, but we got to start getting him into the cycle of, hey, his time is coming. At least get him into some failed knocks. Get him in the room there where he's waiting, because from his span, there was an 8-year span there where there wasn't a better sack guy out there than Simeon Rice. His peak, I'd put it up against any Hall of Famer there. I mean, that 5-year stretch with the Bucs was something else. And he was a difference maker for that team. He got the Super Bowl to show for it. He's one of, I think, only he's 7th, I think, in the NFL with double-digit sack seasons, and all the 6 ahead of him are in the Hall of Fame. He during, I think it's 98 to 2005, he led the league in sacks over guys like Strahan. So he's underrated for what he did, partially because he's not out there. He wasn't the loudest guy on those teams. You had Warren Sapp, you had John Lynch, you had Rondé Barber, you had a lot of Hall of Famers on Derek Brooks. You had a lot of Hall of Famers on that side of the ball, and it's easy to write off a guy like Sim because, well, look at who he played with. But you got to remember that Sim was brought in and they won a Super Bowl championship. I think not the year he came in, but the second year he came in. So he was the missing piece. Tony Dungy has said that. Monty Kiffin believed that. So I'm just happy for him, and I hope it kickstarts this campaign here to get Simeon into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, because from an athlete's perspective, man, I could tell you that opposing offenses were scared bleep of him on the other side.
Yeah, he was definitely something special, and I know, he was talking about all of the Hall of Fame linemen that he would have multi-sack games against. I'm looking at the list right now. I probably should have done this ahead of time, but Simeon Rice is 21st all time in NFL history in total sacks. Okay. Cameron Jordan, unfortunately, is going to pass him this year. He's only a half sack behind him. but 21st all time. And there are only, let's see, Robert Mathis, Von Miller, Leslie O'Neal, John Abraham, Terrell Suggs. Those are the only ones ahead of him, not in the Hall of Fame.
And how
and
many
the only
seasons?
one that's been eligible is Leslie O'Neal.
And that's the thing, is how many seasons have those guys been doing it for?
And that was the other thing I was looking at. Simeon is tied with two other players for the fewest seasons played to reach that number. So Simeon only played for 12 seasons. Yeah, in the last season, the last two seasons,
Really
he combined for fewer than 16 games played. But you had other guys that played the same span. So Derek Thomas, he played 11 seasons. And then other than that, there was one other guy, if I can. Oh, Jared Allen. Jared Allen played 12 seasons as well. So, these are the guys that have gotten into the Hall. They've gotten that knock. They've gotten those gold jackets. I'll never understand why it's taken the Hall so long to recognize the greatness that Simeon Rice truly was in the NFL.
Yeah, and it's partly because he doesn't play the game too much. You gotta shake hands and kiss babies and all that stuff. But with some players, you have to respect the quantity of time they have played and the ability to do what they do. That's the Levante David argument. All right. Mm-hmm. But then on the flip side, if you don't have the quantity, the question is, were you, during the stretch of playing, one of the most dominant players out there? And yes, he was. He was. I know he had a couple of mess seasons in Arizona, but when he hit his peak in his prime for like 5 seasons there, it was just a nightmare scenario. And especially back then, he was putting up some numbers, that were pretty crazy. Like, he was, I think, top 5 in sacks. I wrote down this note here. So in 2002, 3, 4, 5, he was top 5 in sacks. And in 99, he was second. In 01, he was 12th. And in 96, he was 10th. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 7 of those seasons, he was ultimately a top 10 or top 5 sack guy. And the majority of the time, a top 5 sack guy. And he did it 4 years in a row as a top 5 sack guy. Go through any of the big names now. It's hard to do that, right? Like, you think of Micah Parsons, hasn't done it. You think of the Watts, haven't done it. It's hard to be that good for 4 straight seasons. It's really, really, really hard. Hendrickson is the guy that's pushing for it. He still hasn't done it yet. So, I do view, like, the way that we think of Trey Hendrickson now is the difference being is that Hendrickson, like, won a sack title. But, like, that's kind of how I think Simeon was back in the day. I should take it back, even not him. Daniil Hunter. Sorry. Daniil Hunter today is Simeon Rice then. And if you look at Daniil Hunter's numbers, I bet you're going to be shocked by the totals he's put up in his career, because he's going to go through the same crap that Simeon's gone through, because Daniil Hunter is spectacular.
Yeah, Daniil Hunter, 46th all-time in sacks. He's got 99.5. But you take a look at some of the names behind Simeon. J.J. Watt, fewer sacks. He's going to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer. Aaron Donald, he's going to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer. Calais Campbell, he's going to be a first-ballot. T.J. Watt, probably going to end up – it's a little early, but probably going to end up first-ballot. Khalil Mack. All these guys that are getting this, super mega money, and none of them have reached Simeon's level. J.J. Watt never will. He's going to finish 8 sacks behind Simeon Rice, and he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. So I hope you're right. I hope the Glazers are right. I hope the Buccaneers as a franchise are going to get this push started to get Simeon at least into the conversation. Get him in the room and then let Ira do his thing.
Yep.
And let's start seeing
let's put Ira to work.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, and Ira's had his ups and downs. There's no doubt about it. He's going to have his work cut out for him. But, you know, there's guys in there that maybe they just need a solid reminder that Simeon Rice was the baddest, in his words, MFer that there was. So, Evan, what do we have going on over at 10 Tampa Bay, 10tampabay.com, and the 10 Tampa Bay Plus app?
A lot of Rays baseball right now. NCAA college baseball also winding down its season. That tournament will begin shortly. But head to 10 Tampa Bay Plus. We have our Ultimate Florida Sports Show. I joined my friend in Jacksonville, Chris Porter, as we talk some big ticket items in the state. So, for example, we will talk about the rule changes or the proposals to change rules in the NFL this season. We will also talk about NBA finals, NHL finals, and in our Ultimate Stakes segment to break down some potential bets you might have out there. So it's fun. It's a 30-minute show. Check that out on 10 Tampa Bay Plus. And you can always see me 6 and 11 o'clock on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10tampabay.com.
All right. Yeah, make sure you're checking out everything that Evan is doing over there. Follow along on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at Yarcho_Bucs, at eCloskey, WTSP. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube with those notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.